AITA for not ordering any food so I wouldn't have to split the bill. I-27M have been a part of a small friend group, around 8 people total, basically since college. For some background, 2 people from the group, Susan and Greg, are just absolute leeches. Going out for lunch, expect them to order the most expensive on the menu, then feed you some sob story about their finances, and then dumb half the bill on you. Last weekend, Dan, one of the people from the group, told me about a casual dinner. I told him how if Susan or Greg were there, I wouldn't be able to come. He tells me that they would be there, but I should just put my opinions aside and come just once. This is kind of where I might be an AH. I agreed with him and told him I would be there. I show up and we all get to talking. Everyone began putting in their orders. Most of them spent about $40. There were only about 6 people there. When it gets to Susan and Greg, they both order expensive dishes, around $200. When it was my turn to order, everyone looked at me, but I just pick up the menu and point to the $4 Miller Lite and sent the waiter away. Dan asked why I hadn't ordered anything, and all I said was that I lost my appetite. The other 2 friends got up as well to cancel their orders and just have drinks. After the main courses came out, I saw Susan and Greg picking at their food. The waiter then brings over the check. Greg then grabs the waiter and asks him to split the check 6 ways. I stand up and correct him, saying the check was to be split 3 ways. Greg looks at me confused and asks why, since we always split the bill. I reminded him that 3 of us had not eaten any food, so we would just be paying for our drinks. So basically, at the end of the night, Dan, who probably only ate around $50 worth of food, was stuck with a $146.98 check at the end. Yes, I remember the exact number. I swear I saw his jaw drop when he picked that receipt up. I slid a $10 towards the check, said goodbye, everyone, and walked out. The next morning, I found my phone full of texts from Greg and Susan telling me I was an AH for not ordering any food and forcing them to pay more than they had accounted for. I honestly laughed because the stakes alone were more than what they had paid, but to each their own right. I also got a lot of messages from Dan saying that I could have just not came instead of pulling that stunt and getting him stuck with an outrageous bill. Edit. At this restaurant, the bar is separate, so drinks are on a separate bill, if that makes sense, and if anyone is concerned about leaving a tip, I live in Australia. Edit 2. Hey guys, just wanted to clarify some things. 90% of restaurants where I live, they don't do separate checks and might separate the bill for you if you're lucky. BTW. This post is in AUD, so if you want the amounts in USD, you have to convert it. Dan could have easily asked Greg and Susan to transfer him the money if he wanted, but he's always been about helping them through their financial hardship, even though they're just using him and keeps dragging me into it. I admit, what I did was immature, but I'm tired of being forced to play along. It's his money, and if he wants to spend it on them, that's fine, but I'm not paying for them. Also, Dan's a really good friend of mine, albeit blind AF. I was just trying to get him to see what kind of people he was helping. I will admit it was a tad bit petty. Thank you for the gold.
AITA, for abandoning my parents at an island in the Caribbean so I could get back to our cruise in time. I graduated from high school back in December. As a gift, my parents got me a cruise. It was also for my 18th birthday. It was also a family vacation. We usually stay at all-inclusive resorts, but I have always wanted to go on a cruise. I told my parents it was different and that if we went on excursions, we had to follow the schedule no matter what. Well, it was a week-long cruise, and they would not head back to the ship when I said it was time to go. They were busy shopping and bargaining with the locals. I finally said that I was heading back to the ship. My mom waved me off. They missed the departure by a lot, like 45 minutes. They got a hold of me through WhatsApp. They wanted to know why I didn't get the boat to wait for them. I wanted to scream that they were not going to inconvenience 3,998 people because 2 could not understand what a schedule was. They ended up having to fly to the next port from there, and it was expensive. They are pissed at me for leaving them behind. I don't know what I was supposed to do. They literally told me that they knew what they were doing. I wish I had never asked for this. They are making me miserable because I left without them.
AITA for demanding that my niece, or her parents, pay me back for the hundreds of dollars of perfume she stole from me. Note, I'm not involving the police, suing anyone, etc. Please don't try to argue with me about this, or convince me why I should. I have a perfume collection that I started when I was a teenager slinging burritos as my first job. I have over 400 bottles at this point. I take great pride in my collection, and I use it. I'm also happy to give people decants, samples, of most of my bottles, let them sample a spray or 2, give some bottles as gifts, etc. What I have a huge fucking issue with is my 17-year-old niece coming into my home under the guise of walking my dog, decanting bottles on her own and selling the samples to her little friends. She thinks that because I have so many bottles, I wouldn't notice some missing or getting massive dents in them. Well, little Miss Entrepreneur failed to realize that her private Instagram wasn't friends only or whatever, and I saw each and every fucking story with each price and sample she had. I tallied that shit up and got a pretty good estimate based on cost per ounce. Thankfully, she mostly picked the TikTok famous perfumes like Bianco Latte and Escapade Gourmand, and didn't go for the most rare, niche perfumes. She did snatch an entire 2.5 Oz bottle of Baccarat Rouge, though, which runs 300 plus at most retailers, as well as full bottles of perfumes you can get at Sephora, like Marc Jacobs Daisy, Burberry Her Elixir, Flower Bomb, etc. Petty or not, I printed out the entire list of what she'd taken, price estimate, and handed it off to my sister, her mom. I said that I expect to be paid back in full, and of course her fucking sneaky little ass is never allowed in my home again. My sister got super pissy with me going on about how my niece is just a kid, kids make mistakes, etc. I said yes, kids make mistakes, and this is a great way for my niece to learn from hers. Their argument is that now the money she was going to use for a car has to go towards paying me back. I don't care. She is lucky that I have no interest in involving the police, small claims, or any of that. But AITA, because she is a teenager?
AITA for laughing in my cousin's face when she tried to stage an intervention for my drug use. I, 27M, have a condition which causes me to overproduce earwax. I don't tell people about it because I was bullied for it growing up. Only my wife and parents know. Every other day I have to put medication in each ear, let it sit, then flush it out with a rubber-tipped syringe. This prevents ear infections, vertigo, permanent hearing loss, and worsening of my tinnitus. I have dealt with all of these things to some extent, so I stay on top of my eardrop regimen. If my alarm goes off when I'm with others, I go to the bathroom for 20 minutes and knock it out. If I don't follow my schedule, I forget, so I can't put it off. 2 weeks ago, my mom hosted family dinner. My cousin Kara, 37F, saw me waltz off to the bathroom to do my thing, syringe in hand, and asked what I was doing. I said just a minor medical thing. She kept pushing, but I didn't want to say anything because she gossips. I told her it's personal and scooted past. When I left, she was standing in the hallway. She asked what took so long and why the toilet didn't flush. I said none of her business. She said she didn't mean to offend. Last weekend, my friend called me to invite me out to lunch with some buddies. He said to meet up at his house so we wouldn't have to drive separately. I arrive at his house to find Kara and my friends sitting solemnly on the couch. Kara said they were here to talk about my problem and that they just wanted to help. I said there is no problem. Suddenly it clicked in my head what this was about. I couldn't help but laugh a little bit out of shock. She asked what was so funny, and I said, first of all, why didn't you talk to my wife or my parents? She said she didn't want to involve my enablers, which just made me laugh harder. She looked annoyed and said she was done trying to help. I said, that's all right by me. She stormed out. I explained to my friends. They knew I have a condition but never pressed me on it. I guess when Kara approached them, they thought I was lying. Obviously, I'd rather they know than worry about me being an addict when I'm not. I thanked them for their support anyways. Kara had apparently reached all of my friends through my social media. We all got a good hearty laugh out of it, which Kara must have heard because she was, of course, eavesdropping. She burst back in and told me to tell them the truth, to which I said I did. My friend kicked her out. We went for lunch and I thought that was that. My mom called me yesterday and told me she had talked to Kara about the whole thing and explained. She said Kara was very upset with me and essentially called me an asshole for not explaining and laughing in her face and embarrassing her. I said I was embarrassed and that Kara had no right to my info. I think she shouldn't go around snooping and making assumptions. My mom still thinks I should apologize. ETA. She didn't see my alarm go off, just ran into me on her way from the kitchen. My alarm isn't for dinner time, it's for 9:15 p.m. I do it at home most of the time. Edit. Broke up the wall of text. Sorry about that.
AITA for not being friendly with my partner's daughters now that they've warmed up to me. I'm 42, dating Tim, 59, a widower. He's in banking, I'm a bartender, I know what it looks like. His 2 daughters thought the same thing, but he's broke as a joke, and I've got a trust fund, so actually no. He's broke because his late wife got cancer. 3 times. He ran up 6 credit cards, second mortgage on the house, cashed out his retirement, everything and anything to get her the treatment she needed, and then to get treatment enough to see both daughters married. His daughters live 6 hours drive away. We drove to them for Xmas last year and the year before. They ignored me, dragged Tim away when he tried to include me, and prevented their husbands from making even small talk with me by talking over me. Year 1. Tim chastised them. They apologized. To him, not me. They blamed the pain of seeing their dad with a woman who wasn't their mum. Year 2, they did it again. This year, I told Tim not again. He could go. I would never ask him not to see his daughters for Xmas. But I'll stay here. Tim didn't love the idea because me going with him means we can share the responsibility of driving when his back starts to bother him. He hates to fly. His 2010 death trap is starting to go anyway, so I leased him a comfy luxury ride. My brother has a dealership. He called the girls, super excited that he'd be able to see them more often without having to worry about his back, who then blew up and accused him of spending their mother's money on a bullet house and car to impress some bimbo bartender and didn't offer them a dime for their weddings. In the ensuing argument, it came out that they assumed there had been a life insurance policy, nor did they have any idea about the credit card debt or the second mortgage that the house was underwater on, or that Tim was looking at foreclosure and bankruptcy until he moved in with me. They did not realize it was my house, that he pays no bills, save the water bill, man takes excessive showers and shared groceries. Now, the girls want my number. They are sorry I felt lonely at Eximas. They want to come visit and stay with us next year. Conveniently, in summer, I live near a beach. I've told Tim absolutely not about giving out my number. I'm happy to be polite if they come to visit Tim, but we're not going to be friends. If they had talked to me for even 2 seconds, they'd have understood. I am not shy about admitting the only thing I have ever contributed to my blessed financial state is not developing a crippling coke addiction like my cousin Danny did. Tim thinks I'm being too unforgiving. They would have warmed up to me eventually, but knowing how generous I am being with their father has made them warm up quicker. I maintain I don't care about now or later. They had their chance to not be catty brats over incorrect assumptions that I was taking advantage of him.
AITA for not giving my sister my wife's clothes? My wife was a corporate lawyer and mediator. She had some very nice work clothes. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and was gone in 2 years. The last 6 months of her life were hell. My sister Sarah didn't do jack shit for us during that time. My wife never liked her. I do not like her. She is a selfish cow. At my wife's wake, she started asking about my wife's clothes, and I brushed her off. She wanted to pick out a few pieces to remember my wife by, and I ignored her. It's been 6 months, and I've attended my mom's birthday, but I'm still not in the mood to deal with people. Then Sarah comes, asking about my wife's clothes. I told her my wife wanted me to donate them to this women's shelter, and she often helped. It will help women in need with their own court cases, court appointments, and job interviews. My sister Sarah said my wife was even selfish in death. I asked her what the fuck did she mean, and she started going off on how my wife always thought she was better than her, and it's not far that the clothes are going to charity and not to family. I told my sister I would rather see my wife's clothes lit on fire than on her back. My sister started crying, and my mom came over to see what was wrong. My mom told me to be easy on my sister, because she was talking about my wife's death hard. The fucking insanity of that coming out of my mom's mouth made me grab my gift and leave. My mom acts like I had to ruin her birthday by being melodramatic, but I cannot believe their emotional blackmail towards me over fucking clothes that they have no right to. AITA for vandalizing my neighbor's dog's winter coat. Hey Reddit, thought I'd get your opinion on this dispute I've had with my neighbor over the last 3 months. My neighbor, 87F, and I, 28Mem, live in a rural area and access our driveways through a wooded back road shared with 2 other houses. We live up north, and in the mornings it can stay dark until almost 8 a.m. My neighbor is older, nearly blind, and very stubborn. She has a support dog, 4M, that helps her see, although he is not registered by any means. He is a friendly black lab, and she has dressed him in a dog coat for warmth for as long as I can remember. The problem is, she lets the dog out in the morning to defecate, and he has freedom to roam the shared road. Being a black dog and wearing a dark black coat, he is almost impossible to see in the winter months. Between my neighbors and I, we have nearly hit this dog over 8 times in the past 2 months. I have talked to the neighbor about getting him a new coat or fixing bells to his collar or something. But she is attached to his coat for some reason and refuses to go with bells as they are too noisy and would be difficult for her to remove in her condition. Eventually, I took matters into my own hands, after nearly smoking this poor pup when backing onto the shared road in my truck. I took the coat off of the dog and doused it in reflective spray paint. He sticks out like a sore thumb in the woods now, and my neighbors agreed it is much easier to see him. My neighbor had no idea for a few weeks until her stepnephew visited to help her with a plumbing issue and commented on the coat. She asked me about it, I owned up to it, and now she's furious, talking about vandalism and lawsuits. I admit I could have got a separate reflective coat for him or used reflective tape or something, but I really think I helped more than I hurt the situation. AITA?
AITA for not making an effort with my friend's baby while her and I were in a fight. I, 25F, am child-free, so maybe there is some aspect of parenthood that I'm missing here. My friend Stacy, 26F, had her first baby about 9 months ago, Haley, Stacy and I had some tension brewing in our friendship since she was pregnant. In the past, my time and energy had been very much available to Stacy. At times, I felt that she took advantage of my empathy and willingness to bend over backwards for her. She lived about an hour away and was always in some form of drama or crisis. I drove up to be with her nearly every single weekend, and the times when I told her I couldn't for one reason or another, she would beg and usually guilt me with things like, "I'm in such a dark place. I don't know what I'll do if I'm alone. I really need this." She also did a lot of passive-aggressive shutting down from conversation when she didn't get what she wanted, leading me to always give in and put my own needs aside. This went on for years. I grew tired of this pattern and started therapy, where I learned to set healthy boundaries, speak up, and prioritize myself when it was important. These changes led me to cut the weekends I spent with her in half. I was in the process of buying a house, starting a new job and master's program on top of family issues. I knew that she saw the change in our friendship and wasn't happy about it, but thought that with time she would understand and adjust. She never did, and insinuated that I changed because I didn't support her pregnancy, or because my partner was manipulating me into not spending time with her. I explained to her many times that this wasn't the case, and that I am doing all I can to be there for her. Things came to a head when I had a health scare. I told her about it, and the next day she tried to call me. I was on the phone with someone else and couldn't answer, but texted her immediately after to let her know and make sure that everything was okay. She once again got upset because I didn't answer right away, and I had had it. On the very rare occasion that I asked for support from her, she had to make it about herself. I didn't usually call her out, but this time I did. I told her I didn't understand why she had an attitude. She said, "Thanks for making me cry," and then didn't respond to me for over a month. Then, when she finally did, she didn't ask about my health. She didn't apologize or even bother explaining. She instead accused me of using her daughter as a pawn by not acknowledging her. She said that Haley didn't deserve absolutely no effort just because her and I were in a fight, and that it was so messed up that I would add Haley into the equation. I'm so confused. Haley had nothing to do with the fight, and Stacy was the one who had ignored me for over a month. What was I supposed to do in this scenario? I can't text a 9-month-old or just show up at their house. I'm genuinely lost. Can someone please explain this to me? AITA? WIPTA. If I bought a motion-activated door chime from my office because my partner keeps scaring me and my partner both work from home. During the day, I work out of a spare room and he works out of the living room, so during work hours, these two spaces essentially work as two offices. I will refer to the room I work in as my office for simplicity's sakes, but it is not the exclusive use of that room. And there is a second bathroom that can only be accessed through the spare room. I scare extremely easily. I usually keep the door open unless one of us is on a call. But very frequently, my husband will walk into the room and scare me really badly. Like, I'll scream and jump, and for a few seconds, I genuinely cannot control my reaction. Like, I feel like I almost white out for a second sometime. It scares me so bad. I don't handle it very well. A good scare will leave me shaking for hours after. I know I'm very weak to being scared, and that it's an unreasonable reaction, but I genuinely cannot control it. I have some trauma in my past that contributes, but I am working with a therapist. My partner takes a great deal of offense to my reactions, even though I try to explain I can't control them. Sometimes when he startles me like that, I'll say something like, "Why did you do that?" Or, "Why do you keep doing that?" as a reaction, and that hurts his feelings. I always apologize and try to assure him it's not personal. It's just what comes out of my mouth when I'm scared, but I can tell it really bothers him. I've asked him to just pause and knock before he comes in, but that's not really fair to make him stop and knock in his own house to enter a room that isn't exclusively for my use. The scares are bad enough that they can greatly impact my workday. I know this seems extreme, but a good scare makes me feel like my brain turns off for a while after until I get a hold of myself again. I suggested this morning, after a good scare, that maybe I should get a motion sensor door chime like they have at shops. I could install it in the hall just before my door and put the noisemaker on my desk so that I'll hear the noise and know he's coming. My partner thinks that that's over the top, but I want to find a solution that will work. Would I be the asshole if I just bought a chime and set it up?
AITA for blaming my nephew for using my credit card without my permission? So, let me start off with, I'm pretty bad at checking the details on my bank statements, but recently something wasn't right. So I went through every single one for the past year, and there were over 100 charges from PlayStation. I only had 4 purchases on my 2PS accounts in a single year, so I panicked as someone had my CC info. In all, the total charges were around 1,500. I contacted both of my siblings, whose kids also have accounts, and asked nicely if their kids may have purchased anything using my bank account before I make a dispute. Both said no, so I went ahead and called both PS and my bank. The bank was able to charge back past few months, and rest is under investigation. Well, a few days later, I get a frantic call from my teenage nephew, who says his PS account was perma-banned. I asked him if he was sure he didn't buy anything with a CC after I gave him a several $100 PS gift card for his birthday this summer to spend on stuff. He again denied. So I have his email logins, and sure enough, it was purchases he made to his account. All the stuff he plays. Then he starts to say maybe he bought a few items here and there. Now my sister is pissed at me. She says I must have added my CC info to buy him something at some point in time, and it was all my fault he was making purchases from my card. If it were her CC, she'd get an alert. Never that he may have taken my CC info, no. She doesn't want him to lose his account, and said she'll call PS to pay for it all. She said he always asks, and she gets alerts and doesn't understand that I didn't, so I shouldn't blame him. I said, well, he knew he was spending someone else's money, so why is it my fault? And that he stopped asking her for permission to make purchases because no one stopped him. After that, she said I was blaming her kid for everything. So AITA here?
AITA for demanding my guest bedroom. I, 24F, and my sister 30F inherited a very nice apartment from our parents in Soho. Their will sort of just said it's up to us how we split it up. We sort of decided that because it's in the family trust just to both use it how we saw fit. 2 years ago, my sister got a job in Manhattan and moved there with her family, 2 kids and husband. Now, I am going to grad school in the city and want to live there as well. It's basically free and which is super helpful with student loans. My sister moved into the master bedroom and she gave her 2 kids her old bedroom and the guest room. The master bedroom and the guest room both have their own bathrooms. My old bedroom from when we stayed there with our parents is pretty small, but I loved it at the time because it was never our primary residence. Now, I want to live in the guest room with the restroom as I am now an adult and have my niece move to my old room. My sister is saying it's unfair to move my 8-year-old niece out, but I don't think so because it's my apartment just as much as it's her, and she already moved to the master, which, even though it's much nicer, I have no issues with. On a side note, I also requested my father's old office, which her husband uses while she uses my mom's. My mom's has 2 desks and is objectively the most beautiful room in the whole apartment. As a student probably going to have to work a couple separate jobs to pay for my education. It would be really nice to have a desk to do HW on. My brother-in-law is also a stay-at-home dad and mainly uses the office for gaming. AITA for wanting to use our apartment like this. Edit. Thank you all for the help. Just to answer some of your questions, there was no real agreement on how to split it up because my parents died pretty suddenly and the will hadn't been edited in a while. As for property taxes and stuff, my parents' trust covers it. My sister mainly handles that stuff. Some people asked about the loans and stuff, but basically when I turn 25 in 11 months, I get access to some of the cash assets and should be able to pay off everything, so it's not that big a deal. I also wouldn't want to sell the apartment if possible because my mother spent so much time on it and I miss her a lot and you can see her touch in all the furniture and stuff.
AITA for throwing my wife's pillow out of the room. Last night, when getting ready for bed, I tried taking a picture of how my wife was laying in the bed to show her how little space I had. She made a joke of it and hid under the blankets. We have a king-size bed, have a toddler that sleeps between us, and my wife keeps a pillow between her and the toddler. I was trying to show my wife that her and her pillow already took up over half of the bed, leaving me with little to no space, especially once our toddler laid down. I tried telling her I needed more room, but she kept making a joke of it. So I got in bed, grabbed the pillow she keeps at her back, and tossed it into the hallway, saying, "Here, this will help." The next thing I know, my wife is furious, crying, and is gathering her other pillows and blankets, saying, "If I'm that much of a problem, you can just have the bed to yourself." Her and our toddler went to the toddler's room to sleep. That bed is a full. This morning, my wife is still mad and barely speaking to me, so I ask AITA for throwing my wife's pillow out of the room. TLDR. Wife takes up over half the bed with pillow wall between us. I toss the divider pillow out of the room to allow myself more space.
AITA for throwing out a piece of art my boyfriend ruined. 2 years ago, I saw an original watercolor piece that I liked, and I contacted the artist and bought it. When the piece arrived, I sought a frame for it, but I hadn't been able to find a frame for that size every time I went to the store. They were all too big or too small. So I just kept the piece in an envelope in my desk. I would sometimes look at it, remember I had to find a frame for it, but would later forget again. Work, family, and life leaves little time to devote to thinking about a frame for a painting, and I don't have any framing businesses near me, so that wasn't either an option. Today my boyfriend is dusting and comes out of the office showing me the painting on a spare frame he had been using for something else. I ask him if that frame is 9x12. He tells me it's 8x10, that he had to cut a piece of the artwork to make it fit. When I look at it, the piece went from a centralized composition to having the composition indented to the left side, because he cut all whole inch on that side to save the artist's signature, which was on the extreme opposite end. For reference, imagine if you cut the Mona Lisa to the point where her head is no longer in the center. When he notices I'm perplexed, he nonchalantly tells me that the painting was in an envelope anyway, and it's better if it's out so we can see it. I get mad because this is not the first time he has taken something of mine and given it away. Offer it to someone, or just not ask and do whatever he wants with it. His mother does the same thing with his things at her house. In their family, if you're not using something, anyone can do with it as they please. I explained to him in my family, you don't do anything with other people's stuff. I have a tendency to ruminate on thoughts, so I try not to engage in negative emotions, because then I just can't let go of them, and I cycle and cycle through them, and it makes my life miserable, and I have to devote a lot of energy to get me back to normal. Every time I looked at the framed painting, I felt a new wave of sadness, anger, and frustration ripple over me. So I took the frame down, took the painting out of it, ripped it into 4 pieces, and threw it in the garbage. When my boyfriend saw it, he was shocked and visibly hurt. I get that his intentions were good, but he ruined a piece of art that was not his to begin with. Now it's awkward at home because I'm still fuming and he's sad. AITA.
AITA for not allowing my children to call my mother honey. I, 29F, have been thinking about starting a family recently. My mother, 50F, recently stated she does not want her grandchildren to call her grandma, but wants them to call her honey. She says she wants something uniquely different. She thinks it's endearing and says she will be sweet as honey to her grandkids. She and her husband call each other honey, and I consider it a romantic pet name and think it is odd as a grandparent name. My siblings agree with me. My husband thinks we should just let her choose whatever name she wants, but I cringe every time I think about it and want us to come up with something else we all like. She thinks I'm being the asshole, and it will be her grandchildren, so she gets to decide. AITA? TLDR. My mum wants her grandchildren to call her honey, and I want us to pick a different name as I think honey is weird. Edit. I've seen several people ask why this is even a conversation now. We have a dog, and since my mum has decided on honey as her grandparent name, whenever she is talking to our dog, she is calling herself Honey. Don't you love when Honey comes to visit? You love Honey, don't you? I roll my eyes, and then the back and forth starts with the name. I've made some suggestions, like even Grandma Honey, but she is adamant it will only be Honey. If the grandkids call her something else, she plans on correcting them and saying to call her Honey.
AITA for correcting a friend when she said she rehomed her cat. My friend told a story about rehoming her cat because it wouldn't stop going to the bathroom on her bed. She said she put the cat in its carrier and left it outside the door of her salon before they opened. She said she checked in later and one of the girls had decided to adopt the cat. So the rehoming was a success. I told her that what she did was not rehoming and that what she had actually done was dump her cat. I told her that rehoming involved finding an owner and vetting them in advance. She got very angry at me for judging her. Am I the asshole?
AITA house sitting for a friend and she's mad about this? I'm so confused. I'm staying at my friend's house for the week and I'm watching her dog and house, for free I might add. She just freaked out at me because another friend came by real quick to pick up some food I got him. She saw him leave on her cameras. I feel like her reaction is extreme and inappropriate, considering I'm going out of my way to help her this week when I didn't have to. Am I wrong? I don't even know how to respond to this. Text exchange copied below. Her. Did some guy just walk out the door? The cameras showed someone leaving the front yard. Me. Yes. Sorry, that was friend. I brought him BBQ and was too tired to drive it to him, so he picked it up. Her. Okay, I don't appreciate randos at my house. Please don't do that without telling me. Me. He's not a rando. He's one of my best and closest friends for like 7 years now. He literally just picked up his food and was left after 5 minutes of chatting. I wouldn't invite someone dangerous or random or threatening to your house ever. Her. I don't care. I've never met him, and I don't want strangers to me in my house without my knowledge. Me. I'm really sorry I didn't let you know about friend. I should have just walked the food out to the street for him to protect your space. You have a different boundary preference than I do about my home, so that's why I didn't think about it from your perspective. But I am sorry, and it won't happen again.
Sorry. I Tori for skipping a paternity test. I 30F. Meet my husband Stephen, 32. At a friend who was cousin party. We instantly connected and started dating not long after. We have been happily married for 5 years now and have a 4-month-old son. I meet my MIL at his uncle's funeral. He asked me to attend it in support of him. Before we left, his cousin warned me about MIL. He said she wasn't nicest person, and she had impossibly high standards to meet and can be judgmental, so don't take it personally, as she's like that with everyone. I did ask my husband, and he agreed that MIL can be quite judgmental, but not to worry, that he will be there for me. I felt like they gave me the sugar-coated version of her because she was terrible. She made a scene about bringing a stranger to a family funeral, but my husband cut her off and said his aunt, who was his uncle's widow, said he could. She spent the rest off the funeral giving me nasty looks and making passive-aggressive comments. She made a scene at our wedding, but that's a different story on its own. But after minimal contact with MIL, my husband eventually got around to telling her that I was pregnant. I expected her to be angry and have a go at him. But she surprised us both and was the complete opposite. She was excited about being a grandmother. She was congratulating us. Her attitude did a complete turn, and I grudgingly allowed her to visit. When it was time to give birth to my son, she wanted to see my son being born. but I refused. That's when her ugly side reared its head again, and she caused a scene and was thrown out. I refused to let her visit us at home. My husband agreed. But she rang crying and apologizing. She said she was just overwhelmed about being a grandmother, and her emotions got the better of her. Against my better judgment, I relented and said okay. When she first held him, she looked at me and said he was beautiful. I went into the kitchen to get us a drink, and then I could hear my husband telling her to get out. I went back in. She started yelling he needed to get baby tested because he doesn't look like anyone in their family. He kicked her out. She took to SM and told everyone that I cheated on my husband and that my husband needs to get a DNA test to prove he was the dad. She got a lot off attention for that. So I made my own post and said, I'll get a test when she gets tested for her son. That just made everything worse. She rang my husband up telling him to take it down. He just hung up on her. Everyone divided and questioning my husband's paternity since she had such a strong reaction to it. Now even my husband is starting to wonder and making me feel I went too far, and I'm thinking, AITA for saying that?
AITA for laughing when my friend told me the baby name they picked? My best friend, I will call her Kay, is pregnant, and we've been friends forever, like since middle school. We've been talking about baby names for weeks, just throwing out ideas for fun. She even joked about some really insane names, and we laughed about how some people pick the most cringe stuff. So I thought we were on the same page about what was reasonable. Fast forward to a few days ago, Kay tells me they finally picked a name. And it's something straight out of Genshin Impact, or Skyrim. Not the real name, but think Zephyr Rocket, or Banjo Fox. I honestly thought she was messing with me, so I laughed. Not like a mean laugh, just a genuine reaction like, wait, shut up, what is the real name? But nope. That was the real name. She got super quiet and was like, that is the name. I could tell immediately I messed up, so I tried to backpedal, but she looked kinda hurt and changed the subject. Later, a mutual friend told me she was upset and thought I was being rude. Now, the real tea is that she had a small get kickback with our friend group and didn't invite me. Like, literally everyone else was there. I found out after the fact, and it's hard not to feel like it's BC of the baby name thing. I really didn't mean to be rude. I just genuinely thought she was joking based on our past convos. AITA for laughing? Or is she overreacting? This is my best friend.
A story for not telling my friends in advance. I was paying. I 40F. Recently had a big birthday and invited several friends to an adult game center. 2 friends told me they couldn't make it and could only meet me for a coffee before. During coffee, they learned I would be paying for all of my guests. They looked visibly annoyed, and I could tell that if they knew I was paying, they would have come. I didn't intentionally withhold that I would be paying. It just didn't cross my mind to tell them, as it would have only cost them around $20. AITA for not telling them in advance I'd be paying.
AITA for kicking out my mom's boyfriend. When I was 17, my mom came into money. She tried to keep it quiet, but she paid off my dad's debts, bought him a small house, paid off her debts, and paid for my sister's college, and set up funds for mine. She had a boyfriend at the time, and shortly after him and his son, who was 7, moved into our new house. Over the next few years, Mom bought my sister a house after she graduated college. Her boyfriend lived with us and didn't pay anything, but he did work. When I was 21, Mom got diagnosed with cancer. It wasn't good. She sat me and my sister down and went over exactly how much money there was. She intended to give her current house to me, and both me and my sister were left with a large sum at the end of it. She asked if I would allow her boyfriend to stay in the house with his son until he got his own place. I agreed. Before she died, she told her boyfriend he would need to look for his own place, but had time to save more for that journey. For the last 4 years, he has continued to reside in the house with his son. I haven't minded, because we get along okay. I pay all the bills, but he does buy food for him and his kid. He has dated off and on, and mostly kept the women out of this house, which I respected him for, until his current partner. She's been in my house 3 times, and at first, besides feeling a little uncomfortable, I was okay with her. The last time this past weekend was the point where I lost my shit. I was making myself some lunch when she came walking downstairs. She grabbed a plate and went to grab food out of my pan. I asked her what she thought was doing. She started telling me how I should look for somewhere else to live, and leeching off my dead mom's past relationship as an adult was pathetic. I hollered for my mom's old boyfriend. He came down and I told him I didn't know what he current thing thought, but I wasn't going to be disrespected in my house. He wouldn't even look me in the eyes as he mumbled something about my mom promising him the house, and he was just being kind, letting me stay. First, that isn't remotely true. Mom pulled him and I together after she asked if he could stay to set expectations. My mom met him shortly before she won the money and told him and us girls that she had no intention of leaving him money. She did set aside a fund for his son for college when he gets there, but he cannot touch it. Only his son can. He has lived in this house almost 8 years without paying a dime. He should have plenty of money, and if he doesn't, that's on him. I told him he had 30 days to leave. I wasn't going to house someone who would lie and disrespect me in my house. He left that night with his son, but his ex-wife called to tell me I am cruel and an AH for her son losing his house. He is here every other week. I really feel like my mom didn't expect him to still be here, but my sister said she feels like I am breaking my promise to my mom, and that made me feel like maybe I am the AH.
AITA. A friend has cockroaches, and it makes me nervous to visit her place. My friend recently moved into her own apartment. She asked me to spend the night, and as we were hanging out, she said, "Don't freak out if you see a roach." She knows I'm terrified of them, so she just wanted to warn me, I guess, after I had committed to spending the night. Sure enough, an hour later, we are mid-conversation when a roach starts crawling on me. It was so disgusting. Then I see another one crawling on the wall. I'm very uncomfortable at this point. She acted nonchalant and said it's just part of apartment living and that they're just bugs. I didn't sleep well. I was terrified of them crawling on me in my sleep. The fact that she doesn't see them as a problem is also concerning to me. She's just accepted them and isn't doing anything to combat them, which tells me the problem will just get worse. I don't want to bring any home with me, and honestly, it was just an uncomfortable visit. Am I overreacting? I keep having bad dreams of them crawling all over me at night. Wibta, if I never go over there again, I value her friendship, it's just the pests that make me so uncomfortable. Or am I overreacting?
AITA for not wearing the anniversary gift that my GF bought me. I, M40, have been dating my girlfriend, Erin, F39, for a year. Yesterday was the anniversary of our first date. We exchanged gifts. She loved mine, but I was kind of taken back when I opened mine. I don't like jewelry at all. The only jewelry I will ever wear will be my wedding ring. She asked me that before, and I told her how much I don't like wearing jewelry. She got us a matching big lover's eye pendants. Basically, it's a very, very close-up picture of your lover's eye turned into a necklace. I thanked her, and she said, "Common. Wear it." I told her I will wear it at home, but I don't like to wear jewelry outside, especially at work. She said I'm being an asshole. Honestly, it looks creepy. It's weird to wear someone's eye picture around your neck. She has been upset since then. Do I owe her an apology? Is there a way to solve this problem without insulting her gift?
AITA for refusing to forgive my father for having 4 wives at the same time. I am going to keep this short, as this is probably one of the most ridiculous situations I've faced. I, 19F, visited my father in our home country after not seeing him in person since 2012. I've always been the daddy's girl, and I was extremely excited to see him. Side note, he used to live with us before moving away because grandma was sick. About a month into my stay, he confesses that he had married 3 other women and had multiple children with each one. What fair? I then asked this buffoon if he had even told my mother, this piece of shit. Oh my God, my mother found out on her own a long time ago because there were emails on his laptop. At first I was angry at the both of them for keeping this hidden for so long, but my mother said that she hadn't revealed this to us to protect us. She said that she didn't want to raise us with no father. I can't even begin to describe the kind of guilt I felt when she had told me this, my God. But I absolutely refuse to forgive that poss. I have a stepsister that's my age. He literally abandoned me to raise her. My mother and my entire family have been urging me to forgive him for their sake. Others haven't been so kind and have told me that I'm a disrespectful brat and have absolutely no say in my father's affairs. He can do what he wants when he wants. With the constant gaslighting, I can't help but sometimes feel as if I'm doing something wrong by not forgiving him. And even though my mother urges me to forgive him, I can't. My entire family is against me. It's generations of women who have had their husbands cheat on them that are backing up this man. I feel wronged. But at the same time, I feel like I have no reason to feel this way. Edit. I should have clarified. But this is kind of common in my culture. But you do have to inform your wife before you do. And he didn't.
AITA for walking out of the airport when I saw my husband's mom standing there with her luggage. I F30 don't have the best relationship with my husband's mom. Since day one, she tried to make remarks and compare me to her. She then tried to get on my good side and started overly praising everything I do, and sometimes even copying me, like that one time when she literally dye-eyed her hair purple, just like mine. And when everyone pointed out how ridiculous she looked, she actually blamed me and accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So, anyways, my husband and I took 2 weeks off work to go visit some places out of the country. Tourism, in other words. Thing is, I was the one who saved up for and arranged for the trip. My husband was responsible for booking the tickets. My husband's mom wanted to come along and threw temper tantrums when I said no. She called, texted, sent people to talk to me into letting her come, even threatened to call the police and make some complaint up to get us to stay if she can't come. My husband said we should just take her, but I told him he was wrong to tell her about the trip in the first place. He gave me an ultimatum. Said he wouldn't go if she can't come, and I told him I'd gladly call his bluff, which made him take his words back and say, "Fine. I will tell her to stop it, because we won't take her." Things got quieter. Suspiciously quieter. The day of the trip came and we got to the airport at 2 p.m. My husband was walking ahead of me and was looking left and right, like he was looking for someone. I asked him, but he didn't respond. He led me to the waiting area, and first thing I saw was his mom standing there with her luggage. I froze in my spot. I felt a cold wave washing over me, and I was fuming inside. She and my husband were hugging. That's when I quietly turned around and started walking towards the exit. My husband followed me while shouting at me to stop. He tried to stop me, but I told him off the harshest way possible. He tried to say I was overreacting and that his mom was there anyway, and I should let it go and not mess the trip up for us. I told him he and his mom could still go and that I was going home. I went home and sobbed into my dog's fur for several minutes. Turned out he booked her a ticket without me knowing. An hour later, he came home yelling and raging about how pathetic and spiteful I was to walk out and go home and ruin the trip last minute. I told him he caused this to happen. He said that I was being so hard on his mom, it's ridiculous. I refused to fight anymore, but he kept on berating me, then called my family to tell them that the trip was canceled, and that it was because of me. My family said that I shouldn't have ruined it for myself and should have sucked it up and done my best to enjoy. Did I really overreact?
AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's husband's surgery with my inheritance college money. Context. My sister, F27, and I, 18F, lost our dad a year ago. He was my only parent. Mom was never in mine or my sister's life. Dad left money, inheritance, for me and sister, and she used her inheritance to get new cars and renovate her house. I live with my aunt right now, because my brother-in-law didn't let me stay with my sister. I'm planning on using my inheritance money to pay for college tuition. I've always wanted to be doctor, but haven't decided which branch yet. My sister and I haven't been close. It started after she got married to her chronically ill husband, who was allowed to make backhanded comments about Dad and mock his illness and make a scene at his funeral. Only because he's ill and shouldn't be held accountable for his behavior. I've distanced myself, but my sister kept visiting a lot lately, venting about my brother-in-law's condition. He's been in and out the hospital for heart problems and in need for a surgery. She brought up my inheritance money several times, but I end up cutting the conversation. She then straight up asked if I could help pay for her husband's surgery, and she'd pay back in less than a year. I felt uneasy, because if I give her money for my inheritance, which is a large amount, then there's no guarantee she'll pay back before it's time to apply for college. I'm taking a year gap, but I know my sister can't pay back that much, and I felt I was risking my future. I refused to help, and she had a meltdown at my aunt's house calling me heartless, cruel with no empathy. She said that her husband's health should be a priority, and I needed to help, because education is nothing compared to someone's health, and asked if I'd be happy to see her as a widow and my nephew with no father. My aunt suggested others pay, but most of them cut my sister and her husband off. I argued that her husband's poor health isn't my fault after she kept blaming and guilt-tripping me. She kept crying, and although my aunt decided to stay out of it, she said that I should be prepared for permanent damage in my relationship with my sister if I don't help her now. She's been sending texts and pictures of her family telling me this is what I was saying no to, a happy, healthy family with a healthy husband and father. I cried and felt like I was being selfish, not good aunt and sister. I asked my friend and he said, let them sell the cars and all the luxurious stuff they bought to afford the surgery, and warned me if I give them money, I'll never get it back and may not be able to go to medical school.
WIPTA for refusing to stop cooking bacon in my kitchen due to my teenage daughter's vegan lifestyle. Dad here, old fart. Loves his daughter to pieces, but I'm struggling to see eye to eye with my teenager and wife on this one. We've always been a meat-eating family. We live in the rural Midwest, and bacon for breakfast is pretty much a given. This year, my 14-year-old daughter decided to go vegan, and I jumped onto her support team with enthusiasm. We learned how to substitute ingredients, cook new things, try new things. I adjusted our budget to include more expensive vegan substitutes for her, etc. None of this has been a problem for me until recently. She saw me cook bacon in a pan, and then I rinsed it out to load in the dishwasher. She exploded in anger. Teen years, I'm not too fussed about the anger explosion, I know she doesn't mean it, and said that that was her pan for vegan food. I was completely floored and said, Kiddo, this here is a family pan, older than you. It's not your pan. She asked me to purchase her a pan that she can solely use for vegan food. I didn't want her to feel weird about food, so I said sure, and ordered her a few colored ones that are only for her. The reason they're colored is so it helps me remember that I'm not to touch them unless I'm cooking vegan. That wasn't good enough. Now apparently, the dishwasher is contaminated with animal product, and the fridge has bacon grease fingers on it, because I eat bacon and then touch the fridge, and she's asked me and her mom to completely stop eating meat at home. I don't mean I literally touch the fridge with greasy bacon hands, because I wash my hands, but it's clearly enough that it upsets my daughter. Frankly, I'm on team hell no. Her mom is much more amenable, and strongly wants me to consider taking our daughter up on the request. My wife's reasoning is that both our parents live close, so we can eat meat products there, and that she doesn't want our daughter to feel uncomfortable in the kitchen. My daughter says she is fine with cheese and butter in the fridge, but it's specifically meat products that make her feel sick. Now I'm sorry for her, but I feel like she just needs to adapt and live side by side, because I'm not going to stop eating bacon in my own house.
AITA for announcing that my dad's not paying my college tuition. My aunt and uncle are paying for my cousin's college. My dad had a college fund for me, but he had stipulations like he wanted nothing below a B for grades, and to pre-approve any classes I take, weekly meetings to discuss grades, and a bunch of other stuff, which would be fine if you have a normal dad. Mine isn't. My dad has a temper, and I spent 6th to 12th grade stressed out about grades and being screamed at or grounded over things that sometimes weren't even my fault, like a teacher not updating online grading and an assignment being marked missing because of it, and getting my backpack and locker randomly searched by him for no reason besides to make sure I'm not hiding anything. I decided to pay for school myself because of 1, not being stressed over getting screamed at. 2, I didn't feel like constantly worrying that he'd disapprove of a class or a grade and decide not to pay, which I could totally see him doing. I'd rather be in debt than controlled for 4 more years. I just finished my first year. Well, my family got together on the 4th, and, well, sometimes they're nosy. They were talking about my cousin's school, and my uncle looked at my dad and said, well, how much is my name, school, costing you? I said, what are you asking him for? I'm the one paying for it. Later on, my dad was pissed off and said that it was out of line to say that, and I embarrassed him. I didn't do it to embarrass him. I was just being honest. He doesn't even know how much tuition is, so he was the wrong person to ask. AITA.
AITA for telling my extended family how many men, roughly, my sister has slept with after she outed our youngest brother as a virgin. We had a family dinner this evening. My family has 4 kids in total: me, my elder sister, 29F, younger sister, 24F, and youngest brother, 22M. Extended family attended our family dinner, so all of our significant others, our cousins, aunts, and uncles, etc. During the dinner, my elder sister and youngest brother got into a mild disagreement. My sister seemed, at least to me, to be coming across as very aggressive out of frustration and losing said argument. The two of them were too absorbed in their argument to realize the rest of us were getting a bit fed up. Eventually, my sister got really fed up and said, "Shut up. I'm not going to argue with a 22-year-old virgin." My brother hadn't done any personal attacks up until that point. It was completely unprovoked. I think it might have been the alcohol, as my sister is a mean drunk. Anyway, I immediately told my sister to grow up and that she was making an embarrassment of herself. She replied by saying, "Everyone knows he's a virgin," and she didn't say anything wrong. This annoyed me, as my bro definitely has confidence issues and doesn't need to be made fun of like this. So I responded by saying how she slept with well over 100 men while she was in college, and that since everyone in the family knows this, it's not a big deal, right? Turns out her husband didn't know this, amazingly. I genuinely assumed he must have known. He left the party angrily, saying my sister misled him about her past. Family is blaming me for their marital problems. I refuse to accept I did anything wrong. My sister bullied my brother in front of everyone. All I did was give her a taste of her own medicine. AITA for not taking down my video. That was a gift from my best man. I have a sister that's 6 years older than me. My parents for years cancel on me last min because of my sister. I have a basketball game. Ops, sorry. Sister doesn't feel like going out. I am graduating. Ops, sorry. Sister had a bad day at work. They have missed both major and smaller events in my life because of her meltdowns. I met the love of my life. We decided to tie the knot. From the beginning, I told my parents how I am worried my sister will ruin another special moment in my life. My mom told me over and over again it would not happen. The day of my wedding, I received a voicemail from my mom saying they couldn't come because my sister's dog was sick and she was upset. I was hurt. My best man, however, is a jokester. He took my phone, then went to my fiancée and asked if he could post a video of our wedding as a gift on social media. She loved his idea. I had no idea about it until I came home. Our honeymoon was at a lakeside cabin. No cell service. The post caption was, "My best friend. He is an amazing person even if his parents never showed up for him." Video was still pictures of us next to her parents, me on the dance floor cutting the cake, where you would normally see both parents in wedding pictures. The sound behind the video was my mom's voicemail explaining how they couldn't come because my sister's dog was sick. I came home a week later to hundreds of messages. Family members from both sides insisting I take it down. I was told my sister hasn't stopped crying. My mom is refusing to leave the house. I may be the A here. I didn't take it down when I got my messages. I didn't call my family back right away. I waited until my vacation time was over at work and enjoyed my time with my wife in our new home before I contacted anyone. My dad told me to take down the video. It was just a bad night for them, that they will make it up to me and my wife for not coming. My reply was exactly, how do you plan to make up my wedding? It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You choose to ignore my feeling on the whole matter. Then he just repeated, he will make it up to me. I told him I would take down the video only when he made up missing my wedding. Flustered, we both hung up the phone before we both said things we shouldn't have. Am I the A here? I could have just taken down the video. AITA for making a dad joke? Note. My stepdaughter, Madeline, was about a year old when I married her mother, Jessica. Madeline's father died before she was born. Madeline is currently 15, and she's rebelling for almost everything. She did something bad, so while picking her up, I set a punishment up for her. Then she said, "You're not my dad. I don't have to follow you." Honestly, I got a bit hurt from that. But I understand that she didn't mean it, and that she'd probably change. I just replied, "I'm still your legal guardian for the next 3 years, and as long as you're in my house, you have to follow my rules." That happened about 2 days ago, so our family was going grocery shopping. When Madeline said, "I'm hungry, I need food," I decided to be extremely cheeky and say, "Hi, hungry. I'm not your dad." My son just started to laugh uncontrollably. My daughter was just quiet with embarrassment, and my wife was berating me not to stoop down to her level. I honestly thought it was a funny dad joke, and my son agrees. So AITA, edit. I did adopt her, so legally, I am her parent. Mini update. I'll probably give a full update later, but here is what happened so far. I go to my daughter's room after dinner and begin talking with her. "Hey, I'm really sorry that I hurt you by the words I said, and I am really your dad. I changed your diapers, I met your boyfriend, and I plan on helping you through college, and plus I'm legally your dad. So we're stuck together. But seriously, I'm going to love you like my daughter even if you don't think I'm your dad." Then I hugged her. She did start to cry. I assume that's good. AITA for bringing up my brother's premature birth at Christmas dinner to get my parents to shut up. I am a nurse practitioner, and I am the primary care provider for a lot of the low-risk maternity cases at the practice where I work. I also work hand-in-hand with the doctors and midwives to create a healthy maternity, birth, and postpartum situation. My fiancée is completing her residency. We live together and have for a few years now. We aren't in any hurry to get married. We originally had plans to do so a couple of years ago, but then we got really busy for 2 years. It is driving my very religious parents crazy that their youngest son is living in sin. I don't really care. I'm an adult, and I do what I want. We are getting married in June, so we are visiting my parents for Christmas. The way it came together this year, everyone is at my parents' house. So that's my folks, my 3 siblings, myself and fiancé, and 7 grandchildren. So 17 people. At dinner, my mom starts going on about how she is so glad that we are finally getting married and she won't be embarrassed at church anymore. And my dad says how proud he is of his 3 older kids, who all either waited to get married before moving in together or got married right away after moving in together. My fiancée was getting embarrassed, and I was getting mad over this stupid argument we have had too many times, and a family dinner was the last straw. I have asked them repeatedly to just accept that they cannot control how I live my life. I refuse to stay with them when I visit, even if I come alone. Hotels are just easier. So I started talking about a premature baby I had been reading about. It was almost 3 months premature and weighed about 1.6 pounds. It was super strong and healthy for being born so little, and the NICU had high hopes for the baby doing well. My mom and dad both got deer in the headlights looks on their faces. Too bad. Should not have fucked around with my fiancé's feelings. So I asked about my oldest brother. He was born almost 4 months premature. Is there a chance that we could check out the family album where we keep all the records of family births and stuff? I already know my brother was over 9 pounds and almost 23 long when he was born. My grandmother told me all about it the first time my parents tried to shame me. The subject gets changed very fast. After supper, my parents told me that I should not try to embarrass them with private things that are not my concern. I told them that if I heard anything about my living arrangements ever again for the rest of my life, I would make sure to keep bringing up the fact that my mom was in her 2nd trimester when they got married. My parents are mad at me for telling them how to behave in their own home, but my fiancé is happy that they seem to be off the subject for good. AITA?
AITA for pretending to get fired when customers get a temper with me. I am a high schooler with a weekend job at a coffee shop. My co-workers who work weekends are James, the owner's son. He goes to my school. He's a shift manager, but it's not a real formal thing. He's a friendly guy. Danielle, a college student who sometimes works weekends. 2. So sometimes customers will come in and just be angry about such little stuff. Like, literally blow up about nothing. I don't know if they're in a bad mood already and looking for someone to take it out on or what, but it's a lot. Like, how sad. So you have to be a grown-ass man taking your anger out on high school and college kids. So James and I were joking about having a little fun with them and hopefully getting them off our backs. So one day I was at work and some guy was having a temper about how we don't make the coffee hot enough, which I couldn't do a thing about because I gave it to him right out of the machine. So James came in and was like, "Sir, is there a problem here?" And the guy started ranting at him too. So he was just like, "OP, this is unacceptable, you're fired." I started acting real sad, like, "No, please don't fire me, my family needs the money, I need this job. Please, And he played up being a hard ass, telling me to take off my apron and leave. The angry guy started to backtrack, like, "It isn't that big of a problem, you don't need to fire her over it, I didn't mean it." And James was like, "No, we pride ourselves on the best customer service." Of course, after all that drama, I still had my job. We were just acting. And we've done it a couple times whenever a customer will lose their temper at Danielle, or I, James, will storm in and fire us. And almost every time, the person who had come in angry will apologize and say that they didn't mean it. It's kind of satisfying, making people realize their actions might actually have consequences. Anyway, I was telling my friends from school about this, and a few of them thought it was a mean prank to let someone go away thinking they'd gotten someone who desperately needs the money fired. AITA for this joke?
AITA. For suing my girlfriend after she had my 1967 Impala project taken to the scrapyard? I'll try to keep this short. I had a 1967 Impala 4-door that I bought in Feb 2019. A couple months ago, I bought my first house that had a 2.5 car garage. I moved the car in and started tearing it down for a complete restoration. I had the body in one bay and the chassis in another, plus the whole garage filled with parts. About 2 months ago, my girlfriend came to live with me during this whole crisis and the whole time has hated that car. She wants to park in the garage, but I have 2 acres of land with a lot of nice places to park under shady trees, or hell, even in the barn if it has to be inside. I tell her, tough luck. It's my house, and it's not. Like I can just throw it back together real quick. Anyways, I was out of town for a couple days on a business trip for the small local company I work for. When I got back, my girlfriend was all smiles, making me food all the time, doing all the chores, all that. I thought maybe she just was happy to have me home, but then I realized that I didn't see her car in its usual spot. I asked her where she parked so I could make sure I mow that area and keep it clean, and she said not to worry because she parked in the garage. I asked how, and she told me to go check it out. Turns out that while I was gone, she hired some people to come over and move everything related to that car, including the drivetrain, body, and chassis, and all parts, and take it to the local dump scrapyard. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I had spent over $11K on that car, including new parts, services, and the car itself. I told her that I was going to be taking her to court for that, and she brushed me off like I was being dramatic. I told her that it's done between us and to pack her things and leave. I admit I was really angry, but I did end up getting a lawyer, and as I have all the receipts for all that money spent, and I have her on my house's security cam footage, letting the guys in and watching them take it all, I think I can win. Her family and friends are absolutely blowing me up, saying it's just a stupid old piece of junk, and that she cannot pay back all that money I spent, and that I should just let it go. but I have been putting all my time, effort, and money into that car for a year and a half now, and goddammit if I am not going to get justice for what she did. AITA. Edit. Thank you all so much for the support and awards and everything. I'm glad I have some people on my side. I got a call from her mom about 20 minutes ago, and she told me that I was ruining her daughter's life over a stupid car. I told her she ruined her own life. I've been gathering documentation and stuff, and I'm about to head down to the police station and file a report as suggested by Lots here. Once again, thank you all. Update. Went to the police station last night, was told to come back in the morning. Just got back and filed an official report against her for grand larceny and grand theft auto. I showed them all the receipts I had for the car and the footage of her letting the guys come, and take it as well as the title for the vehicle in my name. They said they will be in contact with all three parties, me, ex-GF, and junkyard guys, soon, and they will hopefully be able to recover some or all of the car. Just have to wait now. Huge update. They found my goddamn car. The junkyard guys apparently were in the middle of hiding it when the police came to ask them questions. It was on a forklift, and they were going to put it on top of a pile of cars that was hidden behind more piles of cars. They said it was theirs, and they had the title, but obviously didn't have the title for it, and since they matched the VIN on the chassis and body to the VIN on my title, it was obviously mine. I know at least one person there has been arrested. I think he was in the camera footage I talked about earlier, but IDK if it was the boss or whomever or even his specific charge. They also told me they would be looking into this specific junkyard for any other vehicles reported stolen. They said they haven't been able to get in contact with my ex just yet, but they're working on it. I'm just so glad they found my car. Luckily, I made quite an album of pictures detailing me tearing down the car, and so I can use that to prove what parts they had were mine, so I can hopefully get most or all of it back. Police haven't let me take it back home yet. As they say, it is evidence or something, so hopefully I can get it back eventually. Thank you all so much for the support and advice. She's gonna be all right. AITA for telling my wife the lock on my daughter's door does not get removed till my brother-in-law and his daughters are out of our house. My brother-in-law, Sammy, lost his home shortly after his divorce 10 months ago. He moved in with us and brought his twin daughters, Olivia and Sloane 18, with him a couple of months ago. His sister, my wife, and I have one daughter, Zoe 16, and she and her cousins aren't close, but get along fine. Olivia and Sloane have no respect for Zoe's privacy. None. They used to walk into her room and take everything they get their hands on. Makeup, phone accessories, clothes, school laptop, etc. Zoe complained a lot, and I've already asked the girls to respect Zoe's privacy and stop taking things. My wife and Sammy saw no issue with this. After all, they're girls, and this is typical teenage girls' behavior. I completely disagreed. Last straw was when Zoe bought a $60 MAC makeup kit that looks like a paint set that she saved up for over a month, and one of the girls, Sloane, took it without permission and ruined it by mixing shades together while using it. Don't know much about makeup, but that's what Zoe said when she found the kit on her bed and was crying. I told my wife, and she said she'd ask Sloane to apologize, but I got Zoe a lock after I found she was moving valuable belongings out the house because of this incident. Sammy and his daughters saw the lock and weren't happy. The girls were extremely upset. Sammy asked about it, and I straight up told him. He said, "My daughters aren't thieves. It's normal that girls of the same age borrow each other's stuff," he said. Zoe could easily get another makeup kit for $15 from Walmart and shouldn't even be buying expensive adult makeup in the first place, and suggested my wife take care of this defect in Zoe's personality trying to appear older than she is. He accused me of being overprotective and babying Zoe with this level of enablement. I told him this is between me and my wife, but she shamed me for putting a lock on Zoe's door for her cousins to see and preventing them from spending time with her, saying I was supposed to treat them like daughters, then demanded I remove it, but I said this lock does not get removed till her brother and his daughters are out of our house. She got mad. I was implying we kick them out and said her family'll hate me for this. So I reminded her that I let Sammy and his family move, in which is something her own family refused to do, so she should start with shaming, blaming them for not taking their own son and niece's granddaughters in. If it wasn't for her family's unwillingness to help, we wouldn't be dealing with this much disturbance at home. Everyone's been giving me and Zoe silent treatment, and my wife is very much upset over this.
AITA for yelling at my friend when she took her nosiness regarding my girlfriend's personal business too far. I'm pissed over this, so please tell me if this makes no sense. I, 22F, have been with my incredible girlfriend, Lane, 22F, for just over a year now. I introduced her to all my friends about 4 months in, and since then, she's been hanging out with us, 7 including me, regularly. So, I have a friend, Freya, 23F, who is kind of nosy. For a couple weeks, Lane has been out of town. Before anyone asks, she didn't want me to come. I offered, but she said she just needed to do this alone. For family issues. I won't spill here. And Freya has been nagging me like crazy about it. Me and my friends all go to the same university, and we hang out pretty much every day, so I can't avoid her. First, I thought it started with honest concern. I told her what I said before, that she's out of town for some family stuff. Plain and simple. Subtly trying to get the idea across that it's none of her fucking business. She accepted that for all of one day. She then amped it up to pressing about exactly what the family thing is. I just kept shutting her down, calmly asking her to drop it, saying that Lane doesn't want her stuff being aired out like that, which she had explicitly told me. But she just wouldn't take no for an answer, just kept insisting that it was fine if she knew, and I would just ignore her. Last night was my last straw. We were hanging out at a local bar when Lane called me. I told my friends I'd be back in a bit, and went outside to take it. Lane was pretty upset, so I told her I'd get a cab and go home so I could fully focus on her. I quickly went back into the bar to tell my friends I had to go. Mind you, I still had Lane on the line, because I was only anticipating for it to take a minute. I just said something like, "Hey guys, but I gotta go, see you later," and pointed at the ongoing call. Freya, who was dead sober, decided it was a great idea to try to grab my phone from my hand, yelling questions at Lane. I backed up and held the phone to my chest, completely surprised because, seriously, what the fuck? I yelled at her to back off, and told her my girlfriend's personal stuff was none of her business. She spluttered for a second, everyone else just staring at us bewildered before I just left. I talked to Lane on the way home, and told her what happened, but said it was no big deal, and refocused the conversation on what she needed to talk about. By the time I got home, I had turned my phone on Do Not Disturb, and was FaceTiming Lane, so I didn't see the messages from my friends until today. Freya was pissed that I yelled at her, and two of our other friends, Toby, 23M, and Clay, 22M, shared the same sentiment of me embarrassing Freya by getting so angry at her when she was just worried about Lane. The rest of my friends were asking me if I was okay and siding with me. I just want to know, despite my friends and Lane telling me Freya was totally weird for it, did I overreact? I'm starting to feel a bit guilty. I never ever yell like that.
AITA for telling my neighbor to grow up, get a life, and get the fuck over the fact that I painted my house a color he doesn't like. I bought a house in a community without an HOA. I wanted my home to be my home, and that includes making it look the way that I want. I also chose a neighborhood that already has fun, colorful houses instead of just plain earth tones. I finally got to the point where I could repaint my house. I picked a soft, peachy color with sage, blue, and soft and dark pink accents. Fun and colorful without being too out there. I think if you Google Cooler's Blue Sage Peach, you'll see a similar palette. My neighbor Paul fucking hates it and has been complaining since we started the project. He also made his opinion known that he hates our front lawn. Lots of wildflowers and sunflowers, fun garden flags, a little free library, etc. Each and every time, I've told him that I don't care. Truly, I don't. And I've suggested a few times that maybe he'd be happier in a HOA community that has control over everything and forces people into having earth-toned homes. Paul got angry when I suggested that and said he's lived in his home for 15 years and shouldn't have to move. I told him, okay, well, you'll have to learn to live with a little color. Last weekend, I was putting in pavers that my niece and I had painted together. They're all things like ladybugs, turtles, birds, etc. in fun colors. I adore them, and my niece is so excited she gets to be a part of my home. Paul came over to complain yet again, saying it was all an eyesore, and my niece was here, so I just told him, it's time for you to grow up and get the fuck over what I'm doing with my house. He got even pissier and told me that I have no right to talk to him this way. Do I know who I'm talking to, etc. I told him to just go away and get a fucking life. If he has so much free time to bitch and moan about a colorful house, maybe he should get a hobby. He stormed off, calling me a nasty piece of work. My niece was cracking up on the side. For the record, no one in my family is uptight. We really don't care about cursing. I know some people still clutch their pearls over it around kids. She's 15. But I'm sure she says worse. Anyway, one of the other neighbors came to tell me that he's been flapping his yap about how disrespectful I am to talk to him like that. She told me that she knows he's a pain, but that he has been in the neighborhood forever, and it's worth being nice to him. I don't know. Is telling him to get a life that big of a deal? AITA?
AITA for not telling my husband's family that I speak their language. My husband Peter, 29M, and I, 27F, have been married for about 3 years. We have one child together, and I was pregnant with our second. I'm Western Canadian while he is from Germany. We lived in Canada for a long time, but because of inflation, moving back to Germany seemed like a better option for us. We bought a nice house in Hanover where Peter is from. The day after our flights to Germany, we all visited Peter's family. This was the second time I have seen them. The first was at our wedding. They greeted us and brought us inside of the house, fussing over my son. We had dinner, and soon we left the house, wanting to settle into our new home. We visited Peter's family often for the next few months. But I had started to realize that they would sometimes speak about me in German. They would make rude comments on my hair and makeup, question my fashion choices, and overall were just very unkind to me. They also said mean things about my pregnant belly, which I was already insecure about. I ended up talking to my husband about this. I told him that I didn't like the way that they were treating me. I said that I hated how my every choice was judged. He told me that he would talk to his family. The next time that we went to his parents' house, there were no more mean comments. For about 3 months, it was like nothing ever happened. I gave birth to a perfect baby girl that we named Lilith. Peter's family was very upset when they heard the name. If you didn't know, Lilith means ghost or of the night. We didn't pick this name because of its meaning, but because it is a name that every girl in my family has had for many years. My middle name is Lilith, along with my mom's, my grandma's, and even my great-grandma's. For a while, I didn't visit my in-laws. I didn't want to hear them talk about how I shouldn't have named my daughter Lilith. But yesterday, we saw them again. It was my mother-in-law's birthday. As soon as we showed up, things started to go badly. Everybody wanted to hold Lilith, which made my Emile upset because people weren't paying attention to her and made me overwhelmed. I didn't want people holding her. I was going through a pretty bad postpartum depression, and it was still pretty early to see people. I let people look at her, but declined when anyone asked to hold her. During dinner, I heard my SIL talking to my MIL in German. I heard her complaining about how she couldn't hold my baby. My SIL even had the audacity to call me, and I quote, a fat, ugly, hokey addict. I turned to my SIL and MIL and told them off in German. I basically said that I have always known what they have said about me, but calling me names was the last straw. I also mentioned how I have known German for almost my whole life. The table instantly blew up. People were yelling at me because apparently this was all my fault. I left with Peter and we haven't talked to them since. So, eighth?
AITA for telling my husband he's too broke to be so sexist? Throwaway. So my husband comes from a traditional family. Mum's a Sam, father was sole provider. I come from the opposite. My mother pretty much forbade from ever being financially dependent on a man and drilled that into me early on. My husband worked hard to unlearn the values he saw replicated at home. He, often more than, pulled his weight at home, was an engaged and present father and a genuine partner. The one thing that grinds my gears is how much weight he puts on the opinions of his family. I get that we all want our parents to be proud of us, but this is too much. My ILs are staying with us for 2 weeks. Our usual MO is, I prep breakfast, we all eat lunch at work, school, and my husband makes dinner. We have a cleaner, but she's on holiday. So, in the meantime, we're DIYing the cleaning where it's down to everyone to keep their space clean and common spaces we all clean. This is how we've always done it, and it works. My ILs hate that I'm one of those modern women. They hate that I work, they hate that I don't find my purpose in being a wife and mother, and they hate that my husband pulls his weight at home. We spoke pretty frankly early on, where I established my boundaries and told them I won't be chastised about how I live my life in my home. When I am a guest in their home, I accommodate their ways and play the DIL they wish I was. They have, for the most part, respected this. I got home yesterday after work, tired and starving. I typically get home 18:15:30 and we eat at 1900. I said quick hellos and ran up for a pre-dinner shower. When I came down, I went to the kitchen to help set up for dinner and found nothing ready. I asked my husband about it, but he wouldn't look at me, and his mother answered that he hadn't cooked anything. She told me I needed to do my duty as a wife and cook for my family. My coward of a husband still wasn't looking at me. I just walked away and ordered takeaway. I dished up for me and my kids and we sat at the table to eat. My husband and his parents served themselves and joined us. My Emile was still going on about what was wrong with me and why I was a failure. I asked my husband if he had anything to say. He said his mother had a point, and it wouldn't hurt if I acted more like a proper woman and took better care of my home and children. He said tradition was tradition for a reason. and it was kind of insulting that I thought I was too good for how he was raised. This is where I might be the asshole. I told him tradition won't allow a man on 35K to support a family of 5, and he was too broke to be so sexist. He looked hurt, and I saw tears welling in his eyes. He excused himself from the table. I regret saying this in front of our children, but him saying that to me, after I'm busting my ass to clean up his mess on top of having to deal with his parents, was too much for me. AITA.
AITA for storming off from my sister's wedding after she dead-named my son? I'm a 45-iro single father of 3. Their mom died 10 years ago. I have 3 sons, 17-iro Andrew, 15-iro Connor, and 14-iro Max. Connor was born female, he is trans. He came out as trans 5 years ago and has now socially transitioned, not yet physically. My sister, 38F, just got married. Me and my sons were also invited. My family has known that Connor is trans for 2 years now. Some have adjusted well, some not so much. My sister is pretty indifferent about it. Her wedding was really super well organized to the last detail. She wanted all the men to wear shirt plus tie and then women's sundresses. I texted her a picture of our outfits the day before the wedding, and she said, "Where's Nia's dress?" I was a bit surprised and told her not to dead name my son and that he'll be wearing a shirt and tie like the rest of men there or we aren't coming. She said fine, and that was it. At the reception, my sister got mad that Connor was wearing a tie, but didn't say much after that. When we sat down at our table, the card Nia. I went to my sister and she said she used their real name. I told her me and the boys are leaving and she told me, "Don't you dare cause a scene at my wedding. Nia can be a guy any other day." I called her a bigot and we left. My family says I ruined her wedding.
As Taiwa for silently getting up and walking out of the restaurant during NYE dinner after I was told to pay for everyone at the table, my in-laws. IF32 recently inherited a good amount of money from my mom. I keep the money in a separate account as I still haven't decided what to do with it, and I didn't want it to go to waste. I noticed my husband constantly bringing up the inheritance money and making countless suggestions as to how I should spend it. Another thing is that he expects me pay for nearly everything the past couple of weeks. For NYE, my husband and I met up with his family at a restaurant to celebrate. It was going fine until I found out that I was expected to pay for everyone at the table. My husband's mom joked about paying for dinner out of my inheritance pocket, which made me livid, but I showed no reaction. Just silently paid for my own food, drinks. Then got up and made my way out of the restaurant. They were shouting after me like a crowd, and my husband tried to get me to come back, but I drove home. He got back at 3 a.m. yelling at me, saying I was pathetic. To get up and walk out on him and his family after they relied on me to pay for their food, and thought I was gracious enough to do it. But they were wrong. He said I humiliated him and family, and that what I did was an attempt to get back at them for not being able to help Mom when she was sick. Not true is all I'm going to say. He is mad and is saying that I caused a huge rift between his family and me when it wouldn't have hurt me to pay for the celebratory dinner. AITA